I can jump in. I'll kick us off. My name is Kelsey. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I work at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. I would say, I mean, it's going to vary from school to school, right? Some rounds, most schools will read applications more than once, and sometimes they'll get 2 minutes at the beginning because they're just calculating a GPA, and 20 whole minutes later because they're doing something else. So 8 to 15 feels fair from what I hear from my colleagues, and I'm sure the other three on the panel will have some insight on that as well. But I would say the best advice that I have in terms of highly selective admission and using those 8 to 15 minutes wisely is to tell us things you haven't told us yet. So don't write your whole main essay about your love for Legos and then also your why USC essay, basically the same thing about your love for Legos. I've already read that. I already know that about you. That's something that you've already made very, very, very clear in the application. And so using each of those pieces to tell us something different about yourself, or to tell us, you know, maybe it's in the same vein and you're going to tell us about why your love of Legos has made you love engineering, but just making sure that you're telling us something new, something different, or a different perspective on something we've already learned in your application. So use that time to give us more information. Your job in the application process is to tell us a ton of information about you, and so using each of those sections wisely.
I can jump in to follow. So hi, everyone. My name is Becky Graham. I work at Claremont McKenna College. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I just sort of adding on, agree with what Kelsey was already talking about, but I know like for every school, they want to know, why are you looking at this specific institution? So at Claremont McKenna, we spend a lot of time looking at the supplemental question of why CMC, what do you hope to add to the community? So that's where I would advise you all to spend a couple extra minutes on those specific supplemental question answers, because I know for example, that's what our office is looking at to try to get sort of the additional layer as to how you might add to our community. And of course, we're looking at everything on your application, but that's where we spend a decent amount of time trying to decipher what your fit might be on campus. So that would be my advice, is to take an extra minute or two to really flesh out that answer in the most specific way that you can, thinking about a specific major you want to do on the campus, or a specific research opportunity, study abroad opportunity, maybe a combination of all of those, because that is where we're going to spend time sort of deciphering your fit for the school.
Okay, and I'll jump in next. So hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Duran. I am the Assistant Director of Admission over at Pitzer College, neighbor to Claremont McKenna, so right down the road. Honestly, I think both Becky and Kelsey have really kind of hit it on the head. The big thing to note about highly selective colleges is that they oftentimes have a supplemental essay that you can really utilize to let everybody know in the admissions office, this is me, that I'm more than just this one personal statement, and it's an opportunity for you to really kind of expand on why this institution is the best fit for you. At Pitzer, we also have one supplemental essay, 3 different prompts to choose from, and that oftentimes goes with a lot of different schools. You get that opportunity to really select which prompt is the best fit for you. So really kind of look at those, maybe draft out a couple different ones, but yeah, everything, like Kelsey said, about 8 to 15 minutes is around right in terms of each student. Pitzer doesn't have a GPA cutoff, so we really look at everything because we have a holistic admissions process, but the supplemental essay is where we really spend the most of our time. So hopefully that gives you a little bit, and I'll pass it off to Antonio.
Thank you. My name is Antonio. I'm an assistant director here at WashU in St. Louis. Similar, I'll piggyback right of what everyone said. Keep an eye out. Some of the schools, I don't know if anyone in this or everyone in this panel also have the opportunity for you guys to submit a 90-second video. You can take that time actually to include something that you left outside of your application that you think is very important, and you want to actually express the emotions on how you feel about that specific topic that you guys want to discuss. But similar to everyone, you know, anything between 8 to 12 minutes would be pretty a fair time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for answering that. So next question. We've heard that most highly selective schools have many more qualified applicants than accepted students. First of all, is this true? And secondly, how can students differentiate themselves and land in the positive bucket as opposed to the negative bucket? What are some things that, what are some differences between those two groups of students? Why don't you go ahead first, Antonio?
I think the most important part is for us is we want to be able to get to know this student by name and story. So being able to, whenever you guys are writing, telling us who you really are. That's probably the most important part when we are trying to collectively create a class. I think the most important part of it is making sure that you are telling the whole story. A lot of students decide to omit some of the details, and honestly, some of those details are actually the most important part of your story. I always tell students, if you're a caretaker, if you take care of your siblings, write about that and write about the importance and what traits if you have learned from that as well. But the fine details might be something that puts you ahead compared to other students. Just make sure you include every single detail possible as you can for us to get to know you the most. Sorry, and I'll pass it up to Kelsey, which is the next one on my screen.
Yeah. I would say, yes, absolutely. That is the definition of highly selective, right? Is we have, tens of thousands of applications and admit hundreds or maybe a couple thousand of them, depending on the size of our institution. So that is very true. I was doing some virtual visits with students this week and was telling them that the vast majority of students who apply to USC can do the work at USC. Like, I don't think any of our schools are getting tons of underqualified students. There are lots of students that can do the work at all of our institutions. And I think I speak for our Yale rep who's having tech trouble with that too. I think that's also true of the Ivies. And so your job is to tell us sort of like the last question, why you're a good fit for our campus, why you're interested in the programs that you're interested in. As USC gets more and more competitive, that's what stands out to me. Is I'm checking a box. Can you do the work at USC? Yes. Are you well prepared for your major? Yes. But why do you want to do that major? What do you want to do with that? Why is USC the place that you're going to succeed? Because USC and Pitzer, although we're not very far from each other, are very different campuses, right? So why, and even though you want to study something environmental, both of our campuses have amazing programs in that. Guess what? Those are two very different schools. So thinking about that fit piece and being yourself in the application, I would say that stands out to me far more than an A in, linear algebra at the college down the street. Is who is this student? Who am I bringing to my campus? Do I get a sense of who they're going to be in our community? That's a really important thing that highly selective colleges are thinking about. I'll pass it to Becky.
Yeah. So also to sort of piggyback everything, but I would say just similar to what Kelsey said, I think everyone in the CMC pool can academically do the work and be there. So we know that they're going to be fine in our classes. They're going to be able to do the work here academically. And what really pushes students forward in our pool is that personal profile. So thinking about how, if they're going to add something new to the community, right? We're a small school, so we're always thinking about building that community. We have a little over 1,300 students at CMC, so we're looking for those specific niches that students can fill. And it's going to differ every year. So depending on the institutional priorities that we're working with that year, depending on what the pool is looking like. So the best advice that you could have as a prospective student applying to college is just be yourself. I mean, tell us exactly what your academic passions are, how you maybe explore those in the real world. Are you doing extracurriculars? Are you involved in your community? Do you have family responsibilities? Like all these parts of the puzzle is that's what I sort of envision application reading is a puzzle. We're trying to figure out every little piece about you and then how that puzzle is going to look at CMC. So what would you do here? Similar to my colleagues, what would you do at that specific school? I think the personal side is really what's going to push students over. Also, just how much they know about each specific institution as you're going into your application. that again, those supplemental prompts, if they're specific to the college, then I really encourage you to be specific with your answers, because that's where that's what could push you over, because you could do psychology at so many different schools, but why psychology at our school, or why psychology at one of my colleagues' institutions? So to try to be as specific as possible with those supplemental prompts can help edge you out in our pool.
Okay, Natalia.
I was going to say, I was like, I'll just keep this really brief. But I think kind of piggybacking off of what everybody has said, oftentimes a word you'll get thrown around for highly selective colleges is what's called fit. That's something that most schools are looking for. And that's kind of what dwindles down to who gets admitted and who doesn't, who fits in at your institution. There are certain institutions like Pitzer that base their fit off of what we call core values, or kind of like that school's set of values or motto, what they're looking for specifically. And that's something that we really do look for in our supplemental essay, in your extracurriculars, in your personal statement. We look for it in everything at Pitzer, and that's why we have that holistic reading process. So I definitely encourage you to read each school's mission statement to see if there's a set of core values or a set of values that that institution holds to their heart. And that might be something that could be a big factor in your application process, because I know I talk about it every time I talk about Pitzer. Those 5 core values are really what can differentiate you from maybe a Claremont McKenna student who's across the street, or maybe even a Scripps student or a USC student, just because that's kind of the big one. So yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea.
Great, thanks. Can you guys talk a little bit about kind of extracurriculars, community service, sports? How should, especially maybe some of our younger students, how should they manage their high school process to fit those things in, to make them the best candidate for your school? I mean, I know you said they need to be themselves, right? But kids have choices and they're trying to figure out who they are. So can you talk about those things and the importance of those things in the application process? Go ahead, you're on that, Natalia. So why don't you get started this one?
Honestly, okay, this is such a tricky one, and especially right now because of COVID. Obviously, a lot of people's extracurriculars have been disrupted. We saw that last year with applications. We're probably going to see it again this year with applications in terms of what we call longevity for extracurriculars and getting involved. Honestly, my biggest advice to you would say, like, just do something that you actually enjoy. Don't do something just because your parents say that you need to be a part of Food Drive Club and you need to do it for the next 4 years. Like, that's, if you don't enjoy that, don't do that. You can always start a club. You can do so many different things. And so I would much rather hear about you working remotely for some organization in New York, or doing something, that you're passionate about, even if it is through through the internet, through whatever means that you can, rather than actually just doing something that you're at your school, you feel like you're being forced to do, because then it comes through in the application. When you don't talk about it a lot, we're like, oh, that's strange. They only wrote like 1 sentence in their extracurricular section about it. It seems like it isn't really big thing to them. I'm trying to think like other big things. Obviously, with COVID, there is a COVID section, at least in the Common App. That is something, and a lot of schools have added an additional section for themselves. That's something that you will be able to explain and let schools know, like, this is why my time was interrupted with this organization, because they went, belly up because of a COVID, they don't have any funds, or, maybe they just completely don't have any hours. They're not allowing anybody in because they're only allowing workers and no volunteers. Whatever it may be, just know that you're able to explain yourself. So don't cause yourself a lot of stress over that. So it's just something to know there. But yeah,
Right, thanks.
Over.
Thanks. Antonio, what do you think about that?
Piggyback writing, it's important, and use like the supplemental writing portions to write about it. And if there isn't any, just make sure you contact us and let us know that your activities were disrupted for X or Y reason. And understand that being involved in different communities. Of course, your home community where you live, but your house is also a community, and your high school is also a community. So making sure that you are also, have many opportunities to get involved. And as things slowly start to open and also regress at the same time, just let us know that we're planning on doing this, and that, and give us the whole breakdown of what we're hoping to accomplish based on that. And that's also something that we take in consideration. Like Natalia said, there's a COVID section that you guys can actually express what actually happened. But holistically, you know, students who are still challenging themselves inside and outside of the classrooms, what we are looking for.
Okay.
And I'll pass
Kelsey?
it. Kelsey keeps.
Next on the screen. I agree. Definitely if things were canceled during COVID, like, please explain that to us. That being said, COVID happened to the whole world. So we are expecting to see fewer activities from students. Actually, some of you never missed a day of school. There's a few schools on the Western Slope that were open basically the whole time. So that's our job as territory managers, right? To know those areas and to know those things. But I would just tell students, especially those of you that aren't seniors, that your job in the activity summary is to tell me the things you do with your time. And I hope you spend your time doing things that are meaningful to you, not things that are meaningful to the college admission process. I would rather you spend 4 years of high school involved in activities that make seemingly no sense to an outsider, but you do it because you love it, as opposed to like one, you know, athletic thing, one student government thing, one volunteer work thing, one, you know, like I don't care. You can do 14 mock trial things for all I care. They don't have to be spread out across the whole, you know, like the whole spectrum of types of activities. I just want to get a sense of what you do with your time. You have very little time, and I hope you're spending your time doing things that you love. Like Antonio said, being a part of communities that are important to you. And I also always want to make this plug that your activities include things like taking care of a sick grandparent, taking care of a younger sibling who you pick up from school, part-time jobs to help support your family. So it doesn't have to be like named activities that your school sponsors. It can certainly be things with your youth group, with church, with outside organizations, helping at a family restaurant. Like it can also be things that, I don't know, I think if it is anything you'd put on a resume, which I hope you would put those part-time jobs and things like that on a resume as well. And Becky.
Yeah, really just sort of agree with everything that's already been said. I was thinking about making that point right before you talked about that, Kelsey. Just everything that you do outside the classroom is something we want to know about. I've seen that as a missed opportunity when a student won't list XYZ on their extracurriculars because they don't think it's a like structured event or structured club. Then it comes up on their counselor letter and it sounds really cool and the student's doing awesome things, and it's a bummer that they're not sort of selling it on their side as well. So truly we want to see everything that you're doing, and it manifests in so many different ways, as you've heard from my colleagues. So don't think you have to fall within a certain box or do a certain activity in order to look better than someone else in the admission pool. It's really just, we just like to see students who are passionate. It doesn't matter what they're passionate about or how it's manifesting, but as long as you are having these passions and doing things outside of the classroom, then again, it can manifest in any sort of way. And just echoing everything my colleagues have said, do something that you're actually interested in, because we can tell the difference of passion in the application when we're reading it.
Okay, Becky, just to continue that point, I think I know where you're going to go with this, but what should kids do during their summers? Or what do the best candidates do during their summers? I guess that's a better way to ask the question.
Yeah, I think sort of a similar idea as with the extracurriculars. It's going to manifest in different ways for different students depending on what's available to you. We've seen students, depending on if it's part of your family responsibility to work part-time, maybe you're going to spend your summer just pretty much working and not have much time for other things. And that's totally okay, because that's the role that you have in your family and in your community. Some students are, depending on, again, their context of their family and their community, maybe they're spending that summer doing summer camps or research opportunities, or like if any of their sports go into the summers. It doesn't really, and at least maybe I'm speaking for all of my colleagues, but at least I know for myself and in our office, it doesn't necessarily matter what students are doing in the summer, but we do like to see some activity and some continuation of what they've been doing during the school year, if that's a possibility. But yeah, staying busy, but also not I know this is like a very gray area, like staying busy, but still giving yourself time to relax. You don't have to do something 24/7 throughout the summer. But I think it does help in our pool when we're looking at students that are still doing something during the summer, not taking a total 3-month or whatever break off. But maybe if you're an avid reader, maybe you're spending your summer checking off a bunch of books on your book club list or something, or you're a passionate photographer. Maybe you're spending your summer creating like a photography portfolio and taking photos of your friends or your family. It can be literally anything, but I think in our office, we definitely like to look at what students are doing year round and not just in this school year. And I don't know who is next. Yeah, Kelsey, go for it.
Yeah, Kelsey, go.
I would say for me, it's almost the opposite. I don't care what you do in the summer. And I hope that you do things during the summer that are like the same thing as my last answer, that are important to you. And if that is taking a summer class at a local community college, awesome. I want you to rest, and I want you to have in college, and especially at a place like USC, your summers are going to be full of classes and internships and research opportunities. And so your summers as a high school student are sort of your last summers before the real world, especially that summer going into college. I always recommend students like, don't try and knock out GEs. Like, do what you love, do what you want to do. Don't try and get ahead, because you're going to come into college really burnt out. So I find most of you, if you're looking at highly selective schools, if you're like, I'm sure the four of us were as high school students, you're not good at resting. And so your summers will be full. But I hope you fill your summers with things that you love, not things that you think USC is going to care about, because almost never, I was going to say very rarely, but I'm pretty sure it's almost never, has a college summer program changed my mind about your admission decision. So you do you.
Go ahead, Natalia.
Honestly, I'm probably going to jump on right behind Kelsey. We really don't care too much about what you do with your summers. Sure, like we will look at it if it's on your extracurricular list or your resume, or one of your counselors or academic references or recommendations talks about it. That's great. We will definitely read about it, but I'm not going to like deny you, or I'm not going to admit you because you did a summer program, or because you were a camp counselor, because like whatever. That's your time. As far as I'm concerned, like you have that opportunity to use that however best benefits you as a person. So yeah, like put it on there if you did something, if you did do book club, if you did do photography, or if you took some time to rest for yourself. That's something you can also let us know. It doesn't matter to us at Pitzer, to be honest. It's not going to be a make or break decision there.
Okay, Antonio, what do you have to say about that?
I think similar to what everyone says. If there was a specific formula, trust me, it would have been shared a long time ago. So we're trying to create a holistic class with individuals who have, I guess, different interests. There's not one specific thing that, we can tell you like to do, but like if you guys have the time and opportunity, I think traveling and engaging with other places in the world is probably one of the most important parts that you guys can do. Just me personally giving an option for you guys to do, but honestly, there's not a whole lot. We understand some of you guys play sports, some of you guys have house responsibilities that you guys got to take care of younger siblings or take care of family, or like they were mentioning working or doing anything extracurriculars. But it doesn't take that much way into if there was this, if there was a mathematical equation that we could give you, trust me, we would have given to you guys a long time ago. But honestly, like everyone said, it really doesn't take that much into consideration for us, as long as it's something productive.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, which is testing. So we got to cover it, right? So is test optional, really test optional for highly selective schools, or I don't even know specifically where your guys' schools are on that. So why don't you talk a little bit about your school? Test optional? Should kids submit tests? Should they be taking tests? What, not so much where things going in 10 years, because these kids are ready to apply this year or next year. What should they be thinking about for the next couple of years? Antonio, you're on my screen, so why don't you take that first?
For sure. We're still test optional for this upcoming, for you guys who are graduating in 2022. We're still having the discussion of what will make the announcement probably in the spring, whether we are test optional or not for the fall 2023. My personal opinion, I read files. I'll be honest, I'll say submit them if you think they're going to benefit you. For example, and I'm pretty sure this is probably the same across the board, roughly about 30% of students last year decided to omit their scores, and our incoming freshman class, roughly about 27% of the students applied test optional. So it's really up to you guys. I typically tell students, look what the middle 50 percentile is of the institutions that you guys are applying. And if you think they're going to benefit you, submit them. If not, just omit them, you know. I think it's important for you guys to recognize where you guys stand. I have personal belief on this, but I will want to not share that now. So I'll pass it on to, I guess, Kelsey's in my screen.
We are test optional for the senior class of 2022. That's a terrifying number to me, as well as 2023. So our next two admission cycles, the current one and one more, we'll reevaluate at that point or at some point, you know, this year and see if we'll be carrying that on. I think it'll be hard for colleges to go back on it. So I would imagine a lot of us will stay test optional. This past year, about 50% of our applicants applied without a test score, and about 50% of our students were admitted without a test score. And for us, it truly is optional. If I don't read into it, if you don't send me a test score, truly up to you. If you have a test and you're really proud of it, awesome, send it my way. If you don't have a test or you didn't do so hot because you forgot your snacks that day or whatever it was, like, totally fine. I truly don't care. There are a few things, like for international students, we just do still require language testing and things like that. So definitely read the rules, read what test optional means for that school. And also read the rules for individual majors. For USC, we're test optional for all of our programs, but for a lot of schools, especially highly selective schools, individual programs might still require testing, or placement into certain programs might still require testing. So definitely another thing to add to your like spreadsheet of research to do on individual schools is check into what that actually means. Becky?
Yeah, so at Claremont McKenna College, we are test optional for this admission cycle. So for current high school seniors, it has not yet, similar to WashU, it has not yet been determined for what we'll do for the years to come. I'm assuming the announcement will be soon because it is definitely timely. So for juniors, it's still TBD on test scores, but kind of similar to Kelsey's point, I don't imagine many schools going back to requiring it. So, but it hasn't been officially stated that, but for seniors, we're optional. And really, honestly, that means optional. You will not be negatively impacted whatsoever if you don't have a test score. There's so many other ways we can gauge your academic capability. And at CMC, and maybe this is true for my colleagues as well, we're much more concerned with the trajectory over, the 3.5 years of your high school that we have gotten so far. So the classes you're choosing to take, the ways you're choosing to challenge yourself, what the rigor looks like, what your performance is looking like, what the teacher letters of recommendation are saying, and like what type of student you are in the classroom, how your essays are looking, how strong of a writer you are. There's so many other parts of the application that we can gauge academic capability. So the test scores are not something that it's optional this year. We're not going to be using really as part of the evaluation. But if, of course, you can choose to submit them, if other schools are requiring them, or if you feel proud about your score, they will be physically seen because they're on the application, but it's not going to really sway one way or the other because we're not requiring it from every student. So we can't really put that as part of our evaluation process. So if you haven't tested or don't want to, or things have come up, or you're not proud of your score, then for CMC, you won't be negatively impacted if you don't choose to submit it. And then Natalia, if you have, I know Pitzer has definitely test optional as well.
So actually, yeah, Pitzer's kind of the outlier of this group because prior to COVID, we were the #1 test optional school on the West Coast. We had been test optional for a long time. And then due to COVID, Pitzer's actually gone test free. We are not accepting test scores at all for the next 3 admission cycles. So the seniors, juniors, and the sophomores. And then we're taking a vote as a student body, as staff, faculty, everybody, and it will most likely stick around after that, which is kind of nice. But that means no ACT, no SAT, no SAT subject tests. The reason why is when we were test optional, 50% of applicants turned it in, 50% didn't. We still didn't really use it in our evaluation process because, like Becky said, not everybody did it. So it just didn't make a sense to really hold it against those that didn't turn it in. And so for that reason, test blind or test free basically made the most sense for us as an institution. And it really goes with Pitzer's values and just kind of education justice and what that looks like for us. So that's kind of the reason why, but I'll toss it back.
All right, cool. So for all of the attendees, if you guys want to fire some questions in, we have about 10 more minutes. So just put them in the chat and I'll try and add those. And then in the meantime, why don't you guys go ahead, Natalia, you can start. Talk about how can kids help their teachers write good letters of recommendation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always tell people, make sure that you give your teachers ample enough time. The amount of times I've heard from students are like, my teacher can't get it in. And I'm like, well, when did you ask them? They're like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, that's not enough time. How many seniors are in your graduating class? How many people love that one favorite teacher that teaches AP, micro or whatever? Definitely ask them. I usually say, to be honest, 4 to 6 weeks in advance. And then if you don't hear from them in about 3 weeks, you can send a thank you email saying, thank you so much for writing my letter of recommendation. Again, here are the schools. That's a little nice jog reminder if you don't hear from them, to just kind of say like, hey, by the way, I asked you, but I'm still super grateful that you're willing to say yes to this. Also, let them know what school specifically you're applying to, because I can't tell you how many times I've read letters of recommendation that have said USC or that have said other schools in the area. And I'm like, that's great. This letter of recommendation was written directly to that school. It has nothing to do with my institution. So let them know before they accidentally do that. Because if you only ever talk about one institution, that teacher, that is probably going to think you're applying early decision or something and write it specifically to that institution. So if you're doing regular decision and applying to multiple schools, let them know. Those are probably my big things. And obviously also let them know what you're interested in studying so they can kind of write a little bit more tailored towards you. But obviously your teachers know you best. I'll pass it on to the rest of them.
Great, thanks. Hey, Corinne from Yale is on now, I think. So Corinne, are you there?
I'm finally here. Can you see
there you go.
me?
So Corinne, why don't you answer that question about letters of recommendation and just tell us a little bit about the highly selective process at Yale.
Perfect. Oh, sorry about that. My Zoom did not want to work, but I'm excited to be here with everyone. So I'll actually just give a couple of tips. So one thing that we get asked a lot is, do we want more letters of recommendation than the required 2? And for us, the answer, it's all of our website, is we do not recommend or require that. There are a few areas where we'll like to see them. That's great. Usually if it's research or the student is submitting some sort of art supplement, that's fine. But truly, 6 letters of recommendation do not help us more than 2 very strong ones. After the 3rd one, they all sound the same. So please don't do it to me. I have to put eyes on everything and it just gets me a little bit annoyed. I promise you'll be fine. The other kind of pro tips that I can give is we generally want to see letters from 2 different subject areas. That can be math and science. That's fine if those are your thing. It could be English and history. But really at our institutions, we're looking for students to take classes in many different areas across the board. And so it's helpful for us to see what a student is like in different types of settings, even if that might be a lab and a class where they have problem sets doing math. That's fine, but that's just sort of the tip. My other tip is that a lot of students think that they need to ask their English teacher for a letter of recommendation because the English teacher writes well. But I promise you that I have seen a lot of beautifully written letters from English teachers that say not so beautiful things. So really you want to pick the teachers who like you the best and know you well, not the ones that you think can craft the best letter, because you're not being evaluated on their writing skills. You're being evaluated on what they say about you as a student. So that's just kind of the best tips that I can give.
All right, thanks. Becky, what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I have a thought piggybacking sort of on the additional letters of recommendation, like Corinne was mentioning. So at every school is going to require different things from you all. For CMC, we require one letter of recommendation from an academic subject and then your counselor rec. And those are the only two we require, but you can send additional ones. But like to Corinne's point, make sure, my recommendation would be if that teacher, or maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a boss, someone that knows you in a different realm and can sort of shed a different light on you. So it doesn't, not super helpful if the recommendation letters are saying the same thing. So you don't need to ask every single teacher to write something about you, but it can be helpful if you do play a sport and your coach can talk about, share with us a little bit more about who you are on the court or who you are as a leader on the team. That can definitely say different things than your math teacher or your English teacher. So that's something to be thinking about just in terms of different additional letters of rec. But yeah, definitely pick someone, to Natalia's point, we give them ample notice, and pick someone that you really have connected with over the past couple of years. I know with virtual setting and everything with COVID, maybe it's looked a little different in terms of relationships with teachers. And so we're okay with picking a teacher that maybe you had 2 years ago as opposed to last year, if you felt like you've connected with them better being in person or whatever the case may be. But they will be writing thoughts about who you are as a student, and we will be reading them. So we want to make sure, or you want to make sure, that it's someone that you think can shed a pretty positive light on you.
Cool. I'm going to there's a couple questions came in the chat. One of them was, should they fill out the COVID-19 section if nothing really impacted them very much as it relates to COVID-19, or should they just leave it blank?
Blank.
Yeah, I think you see all of us nodding. If there's
Everybody
nothing
agrees with that?
big,
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay to leave it blank. Okay, all right.
Totally.
And then lastly, we just have a few more minutes, and these kids are from Western Colorado, kind of rural Colorado. How do you guys look at kind of rural students versus a kid from New Trier High School outside Chicago or from Greenwich or something like that? And is there anything, should they be a kid from Western Colorado? I think I know what you're going to say, but or just, can you talk a little bit about that? How you look at the kids differently, and maybe what they should be thinking about as far as their application goes, given where they're from?
I would love to kick this off if that's all right with everyone. First of all, because I'm from Chicago and my stepbrother goes to New Trier High School that you just mentioned. But second of all, I'm actually the person at Yale who oversees all rural outreach and recruitment. We are really, really, really big on geographic diversity at Yale, not just all 50 states, but within states, and looking for students. We try to take an equal number of students from Eastern Tennessee and Appalachia as we do from Nashville and Memphis. Same thing in Colorado, which I've covered for 4 years. We're really trying to look around the state. We don't expect for students to have done things if it's not in their school or in their neighborhood or accessible to them. It's actually some of the most interesting files that I'll read from the Western slopes, because they are a little bit different just because of what opportunities are there, what the students are doing. My most memorable essay I've ever read is a student talking about the rundula in his town on the Western slopes, running, the whole town would run up under the gondola ride in the off season. Like, these are cool things that we don't see elsewhere, but we also don't need you to be super unique. That's a big misconception of this process. So honestly, take advantage of the opportunities that you have where you are, take the most rigorous options available to you in your school, and you'll be fine. Don't stress about being like someone from Chicago or like someone from New York, because we see thousands of those applications. We see very few from the Western slopes of Colorado, which is what we want to add to our campus.
Great, everyone's nodding. Okay. All right, let's see. Does anyone have any more questions that need to come in the chat? I haven't seen anything. Why don't you guys just kind of wrap up? Maybe each one of you guys can just kind of, say something based on what we've talked about, or maybe something that we didn't cover, and just to, take a minute each or so, and then we'll wrap things up. Go ahead, Corinne. You're on the screen here.
Well, what was covered. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
sorry. Yeah, right.
Now that my Zoom is working, I will be in my Zoom room. But I would really encourage everyone, I was starting to allude to this a little bit, the biggest misconception in this whole process is that you have to be unique to get in. All of our schools read so many applications every year that the reality is that no one, or the exception of a person, is unique. So really what we're looking for is you, your authentic voice, what you would add to our campuses, why you'd be a good fit. And then at the end of the day, like what you're going to utilize on our campuses. Are you going to come there and take advantage of that resources and opportunities that we have? So I'd focus much more on that in the applications than on standing out, on bringing some shock value, on trying to make yourself seem different in any way. Just be you. Sometimes I'll read an application and the last thing I read is the essays. And by there, I'm like, this kid's so cool. Like, just be normal. And then they do something super weird. And I'm like, oh, why couldn't you have just been like the person I had met in the first half of the application? So that's the best advice I can give.
Okay. Go ahead, guys. One of you just jump in.
I can jump in. So I think just the college admission and search process can be a lot, right? There's a lot of information coming at each and every one of you, and schools do things differently. And so my recommendation would be, you're not gonna know the answer unless you ask. And you are seeing five, I was making sure 5 admission reps on this panel. We're just humans, right? We're people on the other side of this process. Let us know if you have questions or concerns. Let us know if you want to talk to current students or get a more inside scoop as to like the community of the institution, because I know things have been a little bit bumps in the road when COVID hit and we couldn't have anyone visit campus. We did a lot of things virtual, but also that allowed a lot more accessibility for you all as prospective students. We're doing so many virtual things throughout the year, throughout the summer, to connect with the institution. So my advice would be to look at our website, see what we're offering virtually, reach out, like ask us questions. We want to get to know you as students, as people. So I promise we're not scary admission officers on the other side. We're just human beings, and we're happy to help you in any way that we can. But again, we don't know how we can help you unless you ask. So definitely please let us know if there are things that come up. And look at the virtual things if you are curious about learning more about our schools.
Cool. Kelsey, you want to go?
Sure. I echo all of that. I also would, it's hard to be yourself in this process because that's not how we've taught you to write over the past 11 and 12 years in the US education system. And so sometimes you need a break from this process. And I hope there are parents on this call that are going to hear me say, sometimes I need them to shut their laptop and walk away from that essay for a few days and come back to it. Because if you force this process and if you force putting yourself down on paper, it often comes off really inauthentic. So the best way to like put yourself on that application is to give yourself the space to do it and to not cram it. So students, did you hear that part? Like check deadlines, get stuff in ahead of time. Because when you're cramming it and you're panicked at 11 p.m., the day it's due, I've been asleep for 3 hours. So I can't always help in the middle of the night when you have problems. So feel free to take some breaks, but make sure you have some good time management and you've planned out that time to make sure it's all done ahead of time.
Cool. Natalia?
So Becky basically said everything I was going to say, and that is you have 5 like wonderful smiley faces here that are more than happy to talk to you about anything about their institution. Any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. And this goes for any school. You're never going to know the answer until you actually ask. And so that would be my big thing. And also definitely take advantage of those virtual resources. I cannot tell you how many college fairs I've done at this point that have all been recorded and are posted on YouTube somewhere. I've seen my face way too many times on YouTube over the past year. So if you want to know more about an institution, you can always just search them up. And I'm sure a Strive scan 6x6 will probably come up somewhere by there, or whatever it may be. That's something that you can definitely learn a little bit more about the institution by literally just Google searching them. And yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure we can all put our contact information in the chat too. So if you need anything to know about our institutions, we'll post it there.
Cool. Antonio?
I would like to echo what everyone else said. I'll keep it simple. Just reach out to us. Ultimately, we're here to assist you. If you guys have any questions, like they mentioned, getting you connected with, whether it be a professor, whether it be another student, a student from your area, just make sure you contact us. We're here to assist you throughout the process, and take time, like Kelsey was saying and Natalia was saying, just, you know, smiley faces, come back to it and you'll finish it strong. But yeah, I think reach out to us is probably the most important part.
All right, great. All right, well, that's a wrap, everybody. So attendees, make sure you go visit these reps in their rooms. They're going to be open for a while. And again, if you have any questions, just contact them directly. All right, take care. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for participating. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.